lazy river.
2. You're walking along the street, or you're at a party, or else you're alone, and then you suddenly dig. You're looking in someone's eyes, you suddenly realize that this could be the start of something big. Start of something big. I'm dying. Went out of a clear blue sky, it's a big gallant guy. This could be the start of something big.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HVAF of Indiana's 25th anniversary gala. My name is Brian. Yeah, there you go. Get a round of applause. My name is Brian Dysert, and I serve as the Vice President for Operations at HVAF. I will be your host for the opening portion of this evening's program. Please rise and remain standing for the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the National Anthem. For the invocation, we call on HVAF Board Member, Army Reserve Chaplain, Lieutenant Colonel Doug Hedrick.
Let me pray. Gracious Father, we are here tonight to celebrate what HVAF and all of its partners have achieved these past 25 years in serving our homeless veterans. We also, with great anticipation, look to the future, to being able to finally ending veteran homelessness. Lord, help us to never forget the privileges we have to serve this great nation and the people who have made this possible. Help HVAF to be great at making hope possible. May God's favor be upon this organization, its people, and the veterans we serve. And may God bless you all in our extraordinary evening together. Amen.
All right. Leading the Pledge of Allegiance this evening is HVAF founding member Louise Lloyd. The national anthem this evening will be sung by the Circle City Sound Barbershop Chorus. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my privilege and pleasure to introduce the Honorable Joe Hogsett, Mayor of Indianapolis.
Thank you for your kindness. Well, good evening. Happy birthday. Welcome to the 25th anniversary for the Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. And I would like to begin this evening briefly by thanking all of you for your support, for your attendance tonight at such a special event. This organization has a lot to be proud of. But one recent accomplishment in your work as a partner, helping successfully locate 400 additional supportive homes for our city's most vulnerable residents. And since veterans make up disproportionately too high a number of our nation's homeless, they are a community to which we must collectively, certainly as a city with all of you, we must pay a special close attention. And HVAF is a critical partner in this ongoing effort. And they understand that it is not enough to simply provide shelter. They understand that it is not enough to provide the economic means that helps assist in the provision of that shelter. As mental illness and other factors can often play a role for those who find themselves chronically homeless, supportive housing has been our end goal. Not just housing, not just housing supported economically, but supportive housing that provides a successful, a meaningful transition, an enduring transition from chronic homelessness to a stable home. And the work of HVAF, of course, stretches back much further than this most recent initiative that I have just referred to. For 25 years, HVAF has built itself up to be the foremost nonprofit dedicated to our city's veterans struggling with homelessness. I don't need to tell anyone here how important that work is, so I simply will add my voice to those who are grateful for the dedication that HVAF shows the men and the women who have served our community and served our country. And as mayor, I urge everyone in this room and outside of this room to support this wonderful organization. These issues are moral. These issues are issues of conscience and must remain at the forefront of our community's effort. So, congratulations on 25 years. And here's to another 25 years to come. And maybe, with a dedicated effort, at least as far as it comes to chronic homelessness, how wonderful it would be before another 25 years when we can take chronic homelessness for our veterans off of HVAF's list of priorities. And I said I'd be brief. On behalf of a grateful city, thank you all for your dedication to being here tonight and to this important organization. On behalf of a grateful city, May God bless all of you. May God bless those that you serve. And may our gracious and our loving God forever bless the United States of America. I thank you.
All right, well, we are going to be blessed by the Circle City Sound Barbershop one more time. The Barbershop Chorus will now perform the Armed Forces Medley.
From sea to shining sea.
Circle City Sound dedicates this next song to any and all who have served our country in the armed forces. When you hear your branch's theme song, please stand as you are able so we may recognize you for your service. United States Army! United States Marine Corps! United States Navy!
Until we meet once more, here's wishing you a happy voyage home.
United States Air Force!
Down we fly, spouting our flame from under, off with one roar. We live in fame, or go down in flame. Hey, nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force.
United States Coast Guard!
We're always ready for the force in and shall to win our victory. Semper Paratus is our guide, our pledge, our motto too. We're always ready to or die. I, Coast Guard, we fight for you.
From Circle City Sound, we thank all of the courageous veterans who have served and sacrificed in the armed forces. You are our heroes.
We are pleased to recognize a number of distinguished guests who are in our midst this evening. Please hold your applause until all of the guests have been introduced. I'd like to introduce the Honorable James Sweeney, United States District Court, Southern District of Indiana. The Honorable Joe Hogsett, who we were just privileged to hear from, Mayor of Indianapolis. The Honorable Dennis Weimer, new Director of Veterans Affairs, State of Indiana. Ms. Monica Kozlowski, representing the Office of Senator Todd Young. The Honorable David Serto, Indianapolis Veterans Court. Linda Boone, the American Legion Auxiliary Interim National Secretary and former President and CEO of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans. And last but not least, Linda Morrow, surviving spouse of Colonel Donald Morrow, who was HVAF's first President and CEO.
Welcome. It's great to see all of you here tonight. Thank you for coming out to share in this celebration of 25 years of HVAF. I want to thank Mayor Hogsett for taking the time to come here and recognize this special anniversary. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, the Indianapolis Colts, for the support they show veterans every day and for supporting tonight's celebration. Major anniversaries are a time to celebrate, to reflect and recognize, and to imagine what can be. And I think tonight will contain all of those elements. Yesterday, we had one of those recognition events at our headquarters building when we gathered HVAF's holy trinity of founding members, Louise Lloyd, Rick Schwartz, and Russell Cox. And in front of the staff and some local media, we were privileged to present each one of them with the Distinguished Hoosier Award from Governor Holcomb.
I'm Louise Lloyd. I am a board member of HVAF and also a 25-year volunteer.
My name is Rick Schwartz. I was a board member for 20 years.
We've had such wonderful results to help our most vulnerable veterans and give them a home, a house, meals, and a good place to sleep. I had been the state president of the American Legion Auxiliary, and the national president called me after my service was over and asked me if I would help her in Indiana. She said, we have so many homeless veterans in Indianapolis. Could you help me do something? And I said, well, I'm getting ready to retire, but I'll help if I can, you know. And it just went from there. We kept getting people to come in and discuss it and talk about our plans and what could we do. And it's very hard to get started with an organization, and to especially start with $1. We bought a house in the city of Indianapolis for $1, and look what we have now. It's amazing. And we moved 5 men into that place, and it gives me goosebumps. It was a wonderful day.
Well, the programs have grown and the services have grown both in breadth, the number of people we can handle, and in depth. We've got case management, our own case management here, job training skills, that kind of thing.
We have men that come here not only from Indianapolis, but from around the state of Indiana and other states. They hear about our place here, and they come here and want to live here.
One of the big things that helped us get off the ground was former Congresswoman Julia Carson, who had a real dedication to veterans. She was able to get us about $400,000 over 3 years. So we had a chance to start getting some staff and then to start putting the infrastructure together. We were given 4 houses as a result of the Fort Benjamin Harrison decommissioning. But after that, we were trying to find houses. Again, Congresswoman Carson stepped up again. Literally in Congresswoman Carson's backyard, she owned an apartment building that had 4 units. And she gave that building to us and helped us build that building. Another key moment, I think, was when we opened the Vista Center. We got about 5 houses outside the wire at the former Central State Hospital. We refurbished all those houses. The governor came, handed us a key, dedicated the houses to us. What was really interesting is that within about 6 months, all the houses across the street had all gotten facelifts. It was really kind of neat, but that was really our biggest project to date. That doubled, those 5 houses doubled our capacity at the time.
Well, it would be wonderful if in 25 years that we did not have a homeless veteran. That is what I'm looking forward to, not having a homeless veteran.
Congratulations to HVAF of Indiana for 25 years of service to Hoosier veterans. Your commitment to our veterans and their families has been unwavering, and your great work is a testament to the values all Hoosiers hold dear and reflect the mantra, leave no man behind. And you have it. As a Navy veteran myself, I am so proud of the work you do, and I look forward to seeing what the next 25 years brings. Congratulations and thank you.
Well, I guess it's my role to expand a little on our history. It's not an easy task to tell the full tale of an organization like HVAF, its pivotal events, its achievements, its impact on people and on a city. And that is especially true when it comes to its founding. There's little hope of conveying a complete sense of the enormity of the challenges involved in actually getting it off the ground, or a sense of how the path to success really fell upon a razor's edge and contained more or less equal parts idealism, nationalism, and heroism. Perhaps it's human nature, or maybe it just helps us simplify things in our own minds, but the tendency to believe in the inevitability that a great idea or mission like HVAF is ultimately going to be successful. But this notion relies on hindsight. We think something was bound to happen because it is. It's here. It exists. We miss the more complex truth that HVAF was once a vision with a tenuous hold on existence, dependent on the complex and chaotic relationship between opportunity and random circumstance, between singular determination and sublime effort. HVAF's own tale defies a simple telling because at the beginning, it was more than a good idea, but less than inevitable. As Chiano said, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. Well, several of the parents of HVAF were on that first video clip we just watched. Louise Lloyd is a friend of my mother's, fellow members of the American Legion Auxiliary at Post 34 in Broad Ripple. She recently had completed her term as president of the State Auxiliary in 1993, when, as we saw, Louise answered the call of the Auxiliary's national president, Linda Boone, who we're privileged to have here with us tonight. I believe she's sitting right next to Louise. Linda's call to Louise to do something about veteran homelessness began it all. It would be easy to dismiss those initial efforts at organizing a chapter of the Far From Home Foundation as simple grassroots, tilting at windmills kind of approach to an overwhelming problem, if we could not look back at the success over the intervening 25 years. If we couldn't look around today and see the facilities and programs that are helping so many vulnerable veterans. I remember the homeless issue really coming into the forefront of the nation's conscience in the 1980s, and I also remember how futile it seemed to consider its solution. Thank goodness that Louise saw it a bit differently and decided to act and to organize. And after 2 years of meeting, organizing, and fundraising, and I'm guessing a fair amount of begging and cajoling, I can only imagine Louise, Rick, and Russell's excitement of overcoming so many obstacles, including some neighborhood resistance, and opening what was then known as the Arlington House, now the Leiter House, and finally being able to put a roof over 5 homeless veterans in 1995. Just 2 years later, in 1997, we transitioned from a chapter of Far From Home to the Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation, and Colonel Don Morrow Sr. became our first full-time CEO. Don's wife Linda is here with us tonight, and she was with him back then as he began the transformation of HVAF from a primarily volunteer-driven effort to the program-based, professionally staffed, results-driven agency you recognize today. An individual case management approach was introduced to address the factors that cause veteran homelessness. And this took us from simply treating the symptoms to actually trying to cure the disease. And that gave us hope that the number of veterans experiencing homelessness annually could actually be reduced. That we were less than 3 years from the beginning of our nation's longest conflict was fortuitous, because by that time, HVAF was established on a developing and improving model of serving this vulnerable population. It's always hard to prove a negative, and while the returning veteran population, the returning populations of warriors certainly have had an impact on the at-risk veteran population in central Indiana, what is notable is what we didn't see, and that was sort of a crisis level of veteran homelessness, and in part because our capacity to house veterans increased over this time, as did the dollars and programs to serve them. This time frame saw a wonderful early benefactor, the late Congresswoman Julia Carson. She earmarked $400,000 in the federal budget for HVAF, and that was huge at a still formative time. But that wasn't all. She went beyond simply assisting us in her official capacity, and as you saw in the video clip, she cared deeply enough about our cause to donate the Carson apartment building in 1999. Almost as important was the symbolism of this building being literally in her backyard. As Rick Schwartz was telling us yesterday, she would invite veterans from Carson House to share Thanksgiving dinner. She established what I truly believe is a lasting legacy in support of veterans. Chuck Hainline took the reins from Don Morrow in 2001 as our second CEO, and that same year, HVAF opened its Residential Employment and Substance Abuse Treatment, or REST program, and for the next 15 years tackled one of the primary causes of homelessness. This was not your typical substance abuse recovery program. Longer perhaps than most, and more martial given its barracks-style living accommodations, REST assisted hundreds of veterans in addressing their addiction issues and getting on a path that led them to a more productive and housed future. Brian, in his remarks, will address this current gap in our program offerings, but when funding streams dried up for REST, it was the only time in my 10 years as a board member that I felt HVAF may have taken, involuntary as it was, a step backward in our drive to provide a complete solution to every willing and committed veteran. The predominant approach to providing housing to veterans in this first 25 years, driven by available funding, has been a transitional housing approach combined with case management services and other supportive services. Essentially, the efficacy of an agency's approach was their ability, within about a 2-year time frame, to take a veteran from the street through transitional housing and associated programs to productive employment and independent living. For the better part of our existence, HVAF has proven it can do this. And from the early 2000s, even up to just a few years ago, HVAF's ability to assist veterans was limited primarily by our capacity in terms of beds or units to house them. And so about until 2011, our inventory of properties rose steadily to meet the need. Through the generosity of the City of Indianapolis, we added the Warman Complex of 45 units in 2002, the Morrow apartment building named after our first CEO in 2008, and the 51-unit Manchester apartment building adjoining our headquarters in 2011. Along with these, our current capacity to house veterans in transition is a little over 150. Along the way, there were other significant milestones that have kind of marked HVAF's path, such as our becoming a United Way agency in 2005 and the move to our permanent headquarters building on Pennsylvania Street in 2007. This building has become a hub of activity on most days, and especially on outreach days. It houses our food, hygiene, and clothing pantries, where all veterans in need can come in to supplement what they have. It has become a home of sorts, one in need of a front porch, to our staff, volunteers, and veteran clients. For those of you with a military background, I don't envision our headquarters building as a garrison to which we retreat. Rather, I view it as a forward operating base from which we patrol and interdict out in the battlefield against homelessness, and a refuge for those seeking respite from that struggle. To that end, I think Brian Copes has some exciting plans to share with you in his talk. Speaking of Brian, almost 3 years ago, the Board of Directors hired Brigadier General Brian Copes as our third CEO. The hiring of a chief executive is probably the most important decision a board can make, and we made sure to conduct a thorough search. In the end, the decision to hire Brian was an easy one. He has thoughtfully and confidently taken the reins of the agency. His detent position is to move forward in most aspects of his responsibilities, but he'll hasten a prudent retreat when fiscal responsibility calls for it. He has leaned forward into donor development, understanding that a diverse funding base is the best guard against relying on the vagaries of government money. He is building a network of relationships in complementary agencies and organizations that will undoubtedly help HVAF to properly position itself for the future. He continues to build goodwill and confidence with the board, and speaking personally as board chairman, he has been a pleasure to work with. While only 3 years into his tenure, a history of HVAF would not be complete without mentioning a couple of significant things that have occurred under Brian's leadership. First, in response to the mayor's challenge in 2017 to add 400 permanent supportive housing units to our community, HVAF recently began its initial push into this relatively new approach to addressing chronic homelessness. PSH combines affordable housing assistance and voluntary case management services. We have converted 4 of our properties, 3 single-family homes and our Carson apartment building, into 8 permanent supportive homes, and the properties have vouchers attached to them, and when a qualifying veteran is identified through the Indianapolis Housing Agency, which we expect to happen for the first time very soon, we can put them and their family, if needed, into one of these homes. This push into a permanent versus transitional housing approach to addressing homelessness is occurring nationwide. And in these first steps that we are taking, we are also learning how this will impact our traditional model. Under PSH, gone will be that 2-year cycle where the veteran must exit, ready or not. And while practically we were, for the most part, able to manage this end game, there is some relief in this new approach. We were recently approved to attend the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority's Indiana Supportive Housing Institute, where we may potentially be approved to partner with a developer to create a 50 to 60 permanent supportive housing unit complex, a portion of which would be set aside for qualifying veterans. This is a natural next step in properly positioning HVAF for a future aligned with the current thinking vis-a-vis homelessness. And when I mention the future, which is the topic of Brian's remarks tonight, there is one more event in our recent past that you may have heard of, but that I would like to share with those of you who may not be aware. It says a lot about what this community thinks of HVAF and the confidence others have in our ability to make a difference in this city and perhaps beyond in the future. The Lilly Endowment announced in January a $5 million grant to HVAF to fund financial sustainability. While we cannot use this money to directly support our programs, it gives us a great advantage to use the income from this endowment to engage in activities that will make the organization more fiscally sound. Brian will be sharing some future funding needs that these Lilly Endowment funds are not intended for. Nonetheless, Lilly's grant should give you the confidence that we can execute on these plans well into the future. Well, there it is, as short as I can make it, a history of HVAF. But what is missing from this oral history are a few intangibles not so easily quantified. An organization is really its people, and many of the staff are with us tonight thanks to sponsor generosity. And I would like to speak to them directly at this point, since I don't get a chance to do so very often. In my role as director and now board chairman, I get to know a few of you fairly well, and many more of you only on the surface. I don't necessarily know, in most cases, what motivated you to come to HVAF, but I tend to think a nonprofit attracts the idealist, those where financial reward is de-emphasized and made subordinate to higher callings. I also recognize that at some point in life, family and finances might dictate different decisions, and much as we try, we will lose some of you. But whether you are here for a career or a stopover, there is much we can learn from you and be inspired by. Paraphrasing Father Greg Boyle, who was paraphrasing Martin Luther King about church in a recent speech at Notre Dame, HVAF, like church, is not the place you've come to, it is a place you go from. While you serve here, it is the place from where you stretch yourself outward to help create a better reality in the life of people who are living at the very extremes of our society. You seek to create a world where everyone is safely housed. You go from HVAF and you break down the obstacles that cause a human being to believe that their only alternative on a cold night is a bench or a bridge underpass or an alley. That is how the world has changed. Those you impact the most are the most helpless and powerless among us, whose society looks past, at best barely noticing that they exist, and too often looking at them as something that should be disposed of or hidden away. You see a day when the impulse to throw away or cover up is replaced with a recognition of the humanity that exists in these outcast people. Say what you will about their circumstances and how much better off that we are, not being where they are. In many ways, they experience a more authentically human existence, with their fears and desperation, their joy at a warm meal, their relief at finding a warm, dry place to sleep, their thankfulness at discovering a useful item that they treasure and keep in the plastic shopping bag, and their renewal of hope at finding simple companionship that is not self-seeking. They truthfully see behind the facades we throw up, and when they look into your eyes, they know you care about them, that you see in them the dignity that society too often denies them, but that is their God-given right as human beings. What is wonderful about each of you is that you compassionately stand in awe of the burden that the homeless carry and not in judgment of how they carry it, of some of the choices they have made that put them on the wrong side of society's door. You understand that love is not how someone makes you feel inside, but what you are willing to sacrifice for another human being. And you act on that understanding, that belief, and you love the homeless. I want to say that I consider it a privilege to work for you as your board chairman, and I'm thankful that the world holds people like you. I want to thank our founders who didn't believe 25 years ago that finding a home for 5 veterans was a futile drop in the bucket. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate 25 wonderful years. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you so much for those kind remarks, for that thoughtful view of 25 years of HVAF and what it means at a very personal level for the staff, for the board, for the volunteers, for the donors, for the folks who are engaged in what we do every day. I count it a privilege in this second season of my life to be able to work for, with, and around veterans every day. And I thank the board for that privilege. I serve at your pleasure. When you got my replacement ready, you tell me it's time to go. But I hope that's not anytime soon. Look, my role this evening is to offer a glimpse of the next 25. Now, I'm hardly predicting a specific future, but I can provide you a sense of where we are and where we're going. Now, the military trained me to get the bottom line up front, so here it is. We are planning to help veterans and their families for at least the next 25 years. Now, at HVAF, we hope and pray for an end to veteran homelessness, but until that day comes, we will plan and prepare and posture to meet every homeless and at-risk veteran at their point of need and help them achieve self-sufficiency and their best possible quality of life. So tonight marks the formal beginning of a multi-year, multi-million-dollar capital campaign to raise funds for the launch of a veteran-centric recovery center, a veteran-centric crisis housing center, and an expanded workforce development program. Now, when I started at HVAF 3 years ago, I quickly recognized what a mature and high-functioning agency it was, and what an exceptional team of committed professionals had been recruited to serve our veterans. It was apparent to me in the first few weeks, having visited countless military units, and you can get a sense very quickly for whether things are working well or things are not working well. And it was apparent to me that this agency that I'd been allowed to lead for a season was poised to go to the next level. Now, I had no idea what that next level looked like or what it could even possibly mean, but it was apparent to me that the potential was there. Now, I don't claim any credit for that beyond sometimes resisting my urge to tinker with things that are working just fine. You know the old adage, if it ain't broke. I would tell you that all credit and praise is due to the extraordinary staff that serves our veterans eyeball to eyeball, face to face every single day. If you are one of the full-time staff, please stand so you can be recognized. This is the team that makes it happen every day. And all credit is due to the board of directors who have remained focused on helping veterans and their families and not straying from the core mission and the original intent that our founding members had. So if you are a member of the board of directors, would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for your leadership. So the agency's on a positive trajectory, and we're building momentum. And we'll continue to move forward in a deliberate manner, anticipating risks and exploiting opportunities. So in the last 24 months, we've served over 3,000 individual veterans and veterans with families. Now, as Chuck alluded to, we ended our former substance abuse recovery program, but we've expanded our portfolio of services to fill gaps and serve more veterans. As he said, in 2017, we converted 4 of our properties into 8 units of permanent supportive housing as part of the mayor's challenge. Early in 2018, we were awarded an emergency solutions grant from the city, which now allows us to serve veterans who are not eligible for our Veterans Administration grants. That was a population that we had to turn away because they didn't meet the eligibility criteria for the VA grants that we administered, but the Emergency Solutions Grant allows us to serve the 15 to 20% that we had to turn away. Last spring, we were awarded a tenant-based rental assistance grant focused on housing veterans leaving incarceration, a very select population that we now have the opportunity to serve. Last summer, we hired a housing navigator to help veterans who have already been awarded a housing voucher from the VA, but don't really have the wherewithal to know how to take that voucher, connect with a landlord, go through the whole process and get housed. Our housing navigator helps them connect with a landlord and get housed more quickly. Last fall, we launched a Transition in Place program. We place veterans in a stable, leased house setting. We provide supportive services for 6 to 12 months while the veteran achieves self-sufficiency, and then we move on and do it again for the next veteran. In this winter, we partnered with a tax credit housing developer, and we were selected to participate in the 2019 Supportive Housing Institute to develop a proposal for a supportive housing project with 25% of the units set aside for veteran families. And if we're awarded funding in 2019 after we complete the institute, we would break ground, we would anticipate, in 2021. So that's already out there over the horizon for the next couple of years. Our food, clothing, and hygiene pantries have been relocated to the main floor, and we've adopted a customer service model which better aligns our distribution of food with the needs of the veteran, and, I argue more importantly, it better respects their dignity, free will, and consumer choice. In the next few months, we'll launch our Veterans Community Center, to be named in honor of Colonel Retired Donald W. Morrow Sr., HVAF's first full-time president and CEO. And besides the current food and clothing pantries, the Community Center will also offer a USO-like hospitality area connected to a computer lab. Because we have veterans that come in 3 hours early for our twice-weekly outreach because they want a safe place to be. They want a place where they feel like they belong, where they can associate with other veterans, and where they know their military service is going to be recognized and respected. So we're responding to that need. And it'll be open to all veterans in the community as a place to belong, to be safe, and to be surrounded by people who recognize and respect their service and sacrifice. So where are we going? Okay, take a look at the note card on your table, or you can just watch the screens above. So this is what HVAF does and why we do it. Now, this was my attempt to make the complex simple, and I think I've probably fallen short of that goal. Although anybody that's served with me can tell you this is one of the least complicated PowerPoint slides I've ever built. All right, fundamentally, we help veterans and families. Now, we focus primarily on homeless veterans and those at risk of becoming homeless. We provide legal and employment and counseling services which create favorable conditions for our clients to secure housing and a stable income. Now, what we do is simple, but it's not easy. What we do is simple, but it's not cheap. What we do is simple, but it's not quick. Now, on the right side of the card, as you're facing it, the desired end state is self-sufficiency and quality of life. Now, that's a fuzzy yardstick to measure with because each veteran's situation is different, but the goal remains the same, to take their circumstances, meet them at their point of need, and move them to a place of self-sufficiency and the best possible quality of life given the totality of their circumstances. Now, the way we move the veteran toward that end state is the lines of effort there: meeting basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, safety, enhancing wellness, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and by creating financial stability through employment, through housing vouchers, and through disability ratings, which we help them with. Now, the homeless to housed arrow there in the center illustrates the continuum in which we operate. And the little black boxes below the arrow represent the programs that we currently administer. And you'll notice the service gap in that continuum. We argue, we assert that we must be able to meet veterans where they are, any place on that continuum, and then support and encourage them on their journey to self-sufficiency. Now, we don't currently have the ability to house a homeless veteran immediately. It takes a few days of bureaucracy to determine eligibility, and then they may be on a waiting list. And while there are already recovery programs and shelters in our community, the detox and recovery programs are few and expensive, and the shelters are overcrowded waypoints to where? HVAF has got to be that where for veterans. There's an inherent therapeutic value in veterans associating with other veterans. There's an instant rapport regardless of branch of service or era of service. There's an immediate trust. The majority of the veterans we serve are one and done. This is their first and what they hope will be their last homeless episode. Life's temporarily got the best of them. But for other veterans, it's been a long and painful descent into homelessness, and it'll take more time, effort, and resources to get them back on their feet. I want to share a story with you. Richard, one of our newest HVAF team members, works our front desk as part of the community center. While not a veteran, Richard was living at Wheeler Mission when we hired him. 2 months later, he's got a place of his own and a roommate. He has instant credibility when he engages with the clients that come in and talk to him. Now, Richard recently responded to a veteran in need. Now, the Marine's reluctance and his shame and embarrassment asking for help are typical of most veterans. So here's Richard's short email reply back to this Marine veteran in need who's ashamed and embarrassed to ask for help. Mr. Smith, not his real name. First off, I would like to thank you for serving our great country. You have reached out to the right place. HVAF's concentration is on the well-being of the veterans who served our country, with a primary focus on the homeless veterans or those at risk of becoming homeless. Please do not feel bad for having to ask for help at this point in your life. Just think of it as support, because we are all one big family here to support one another. Richard's response exemplifies the HVAF values of respect and dignity. His response also reflects the culture of caring, compassion, and professionalism exhibited by every HVAF employee, board member, and volunteer as they interact with any and every veteran we serve. So please flip your note card over. Next slide, please. That's the one, okay. Titled HVAF Way Ahead. So I said we're officially launching a long-term capital campaign to raise funds for 3 broad initiatives, and you'll see them there below. A residential recovery center for substance abuse and addiction recovery, a crisis housing, emergency housing, think shelter, and an expanded workforce development program. And the numbers that you see there, the $3 million is pretty close. At full capacity with full staff, and we've got a working model, it would take about $2.86 million, call it 3 for round numbers, for startup and first year operating costs. And then in perpetuity, at full capacity, it would be a 50-bed program. Just because we had to have a model to budget against, it would be about $1.2 million a year to operate. The emergency housing is a rough estimate there, $1 million. Each of these efforts addresses an identifiable and quantifiable current need in the veteran community, and each need is predicted to exist for the foreseeable future. The proposed recovery center and crisis housing center support our meeting basic needs and enhancing wellness lines of effort. The expanded workforce development program supports creating financial stability efforts. Our goal is to launch these initiatives as resources permit, with a soft timeline of 3 to 5 years to launch the recovery center and 5 to 10 to operationalize the crisis housing and workforce development. And while we present these efforts sequentially, we're going to be ever watchful for unanticipated but exploitable opportunities to accelerate each initiative. Please note the little blue placeholder up there labeled Medicaid biller. We've begun taking baby steps down that path on what we currently think is about a 3-year journey to get us certified and credentialed to where we could be a Medicaid biller and be able to bill private insurance. And that is a revenue stream that we must tap into. The Lilly effect. The recent positive visibility brought to the HVAF brand by the $5 million grant from Lilly has generated and will continue to generate increased attention and increased credibility to our cause and to our agency. No one should be surprised to discover that we are much more popular now with $5 million in the bank. It's like winning the lottery. We got friends and family we didn't know we had. It is a great place to be. Lilly Endowment thinks we're worth investing in. So should you. And we intend to exploit this opportunity and leverage the Lilly Endowment stamp of approval to advance our long-term efforts. So legacy and estate donors want to know their gifts will matter in perpetuity. Now we can now more credibly claim that HVAF will endure so long as the need for us endures. Lilly Endowment thinks we have staying power. They would not have invested in us. The money attracts money, and we intend to court major gift donors with the opportunity to contribute to our endowment and create future opportunities for HVAF. We'll solicit one-time and recurring gifts earmarked for this capital campaign, but we plan for these donations to appreciate in value by associating them with our endowment as an investment platform until the time comes to break ground on the new initiatives. So, all that to say, we are planning for at least another 25 years of HVAF serving homeless and at-risk veterans and their families. We do not intend to stray from our core mission of helping veterans and their families. That focus with a long-term future orientation will shape our view of needs and possibilities. It will inform our assessment of risk and opportunities, and it will guide the development of our future plans. Now, nothing we do or contemplate is possible without the continued support of patriotic donors, dedicated volunteers, engaged directors, and professional staff like those of you here this evening. Thank you for coming. God bless. Hua.